All right, I see we are recording. So good evening and happy new year. It is 6 o'clock on the dot, and I am officially calling the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage board meeting to order. So if we can go through and do a, we forgot roll call, but before we do roll call, can I just have an adoption of the meeting agenda with the addition to add roll call?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. So if we can do a roll call, Shakira, can you please do a roll call for us?
Sure. Chair
And welcome
Hughes.
back.
Thank you.
I am present.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Crawford.
Present.
Councilmember Nandi.
Present.
Councilmember Bonds.
Present.
Vice Chair Doe.
Present.
That looks to be all of the council members who are here. Oh, hold on one second. I see Councilmember Dukes.
Okay.
Let me see if he's connected.
I think he's getting connected.
Yeah. Councilmember Dukes, are you there?
Councilmember Dukes is present. I'm sorry, everyone.
That's okay.
Trying to get technology out.
Okay, that completes roll call.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Our next agenda item is our consent agenda, and the only item for consent agenda is the approval of the minutes. I do have one quick correction, and I caught it just a few minutes ago. And Shakira, for notes, make sure that you note that I think I see Holly's is on too. So Hollis is on. So if you want to note him for being present as well. But on the meeting minutes, the only thing that needs to be noted is from the attendance. We did get notification about Deborah, that she was not going to be able to attend the December meeting. So if you could just make sure that that asterisk is, because it was, I believe, left blank. And I do remember getting a notification that she was not going to be able to make it. So if we can just make that note. Other than that, I don't think there are any other corrections or additions. So with that, if I can have a motion to approve our consent agenda item, which is the approval of the December board meeting minutes.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Awesome. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I do see that Treasurer Daniels is not on the call quite yet. So if either Shakira or Linda, can you all go over the financial report, please?
Sure, I can pull it up in 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen all right?
Yep, I can.
Okay, so this is our financial report for January. As you can see, we still have quite a bit of money to expend before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. We have $74,841.52. There were no major expenses for this month. Everything was just in line typical. There will be a few more things entered in later this month that'll pop out next month, which is going to be just getting caught up on past due invoices for our contractors. But other than that, everything is pretty typical and standard. Any questions?
Any questions for Shakira? And I'm not hearing any. I do just want to kind of remind everyone that Remember, this is the end of the biennium. And so the 74.8 in the unobligated column will need to be expended by June 30th of this year. I was about to say of 2021, we're in 2021. And so this year it will be expended. A couple of things that I want to note, and I try to reiterate this just because I know sometimes we have community members on the call, is we had talked about probably about 2 months ago that potentially we may have to decrease our budget. And if we have to do that, as far as they've asked people to kind of cut back some of their expenses, we would actually pull it from our unobligated section. And so there's a couple of things that we do have that are already earmarked. They have not been encumbered, but there are a couple of things that I know that we're looking at earmarking for the unobligated. But I just want to, just keep reminding us, because what we want to see as we get closer to that June 30th date, then the hope would be we're going to see a decrease in that amount. So I just wanted to just kind of throw that out as a reminder. Any questions? Any other questions or concerns?
Well, this is Councilmember Doe. On the flip side, though, I wish I agree with what you just said. On the flip side, though, if that doesn't happen, then we need to start thinking how we're going to get to some of that money to make sure that we get a use before the June 30th date, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And Councilmember Hughes, if I could interject a comment.
Sure.
So we have our staff meeting on Friday, and that is a topic of discussion. I know one of the things that we're looking at too is getting headshots for the council members, because as we produce marketing materials, we need to have a cohesiveness. And so we're looking at that as well. But we will come back to the council with our ideas. And if you guys can present us with ideas as to how to spend the additional funding as well, that would be fantastic.
No, thank you for that. So Shakira, you can stop sharing if there are no other questions from the council members in reference to our budget. And I'm going to move right along to, I do see we have one community member, Dr. Lawson is on, and then we also have Jasmine, our intern, is also on. So welcome, Jasmine. I know you're a part of the attendee list, but wanted to welcome you to your first council meeting with us. Are there any public comments? So Dr. Lawson, I didn't know if there was any questions you had, and not to call you out, but just because you're you're probably the only one that's on here from the community. So didn't know if there were any questions that you had. I'll give a minute to see if there's any response. And seeing none, just looking. Yep, so seeing that there are no public comments, we're going to keep pushing along here. We're cooking with grease tonight. So can we move to our unfinished business? And this is actually going to be some quick information. So a couple of things. So the commissioner schedule 2021 executive committee met last week. And one of the things that we had talked about is really kind of chunking out who we want to invite and when. We have already confirmed for February, commissioner from, and help me out, Shakira, is it MMB for February?
Yep, MMB.
Yes. So we will have the commissioner from Minnesota Management and Budget is who will come on, come in February. I had also thrown out, and I think we're going to try and get them to come back, is having Commissioner Malcolm and also Dr. Nathan Chumalo. So if you recall, we had them come a couple months ago when we were kind of in the midst of kind of that high surge of our pandemic. And I think now is a great time for them to come back, and hopefully we can get them to come back in March and really talk about what are some of the effects and what are some of the impacts to the vaccine. I know that there has been much conversation within the BIPOC community, concern about, hey, here we are again being used, as a test, so to speak. And we want to make sure that, we're not being tested and then something goes bad. What are the pros and the cons of getting the vaccination, and what should we be looking for? Should we encourage it? Should we not encourage it? And so I just think any information that we can get from the two of them, I think will be helpful, specifically because Dr. Chumalo, I know, has talked about it in various aspects. And I think the other thing is, he has been very instrumental in the BIPOC community to really educate and explain about, COVID-19, the impact that it has, more specifically on the Black community. And I say Black holistically. I'm not discounting East and West African immigrants. I am talking about everybody when I talk about Black. So from that Black African heritage community, love to hear what his concerns or comments are, or how he can really shed light on, whether you should get vaccinated or not, whether, depending upon your frontline status, are you eligible to get it, and how do people go about getting it, and just kind of hearing about that. So for February and March, those are the two that we're hoping for. And then maybe in April, I know at one point in time, we really want to have, Commissioner Alice Roberts Davis come from Department of Admin. And so we're hoping to get her. Potentially, we could probably get both of them. So Shakir, I'm going to throw that one out at you as well. Maybe we could have MMB and admin for next month, provided Alice is available. If she's not, then maybe we can, try to connect with someone else. And I see, Hollis, I see what you had chatted, and we actually did have them come already. So Deed has already shown up. And so we're trying to get ones that haven't been here first. And I know there's a couple of them that we want to bring back. And reason why, obviously, Commissioner Malcolm and Dr. Chumalo would make sense because of what's going on with the vaccine. But I'm not discounting workforce, because I believe that that's a good one too, that we do need to hear, especially now that we're in session. What does that mean? And some of the things that we need to be looking at. So that is around the commissioner's schedule. The other piece that we wanted to talk about, and this was brought up actually from one of our community members, was around how do we encourage people to have to actually come and present on community presentations. So this is honestly where we come into play. So if there are people or organizations that we're connected to and they want to, they've run something by you and they're like, hey, I would love for the council to get involved, or just the council to have knowledge of it, this is the time to kind of reach out to those community members and invite them to come and present. What would be different from a community presentation versus just opening up for public comments is we would actually give them time on our agenda, which is very different than when we open up for public comments. When we have public comments, it's literally a minute or two that we ask people to come and kind of say, hey, what is it that you want to be able to tell us? Whether it's something around an event, whether it's just informational purposes. But if there are organizations that you feel like the council either A, does not have a relationship with, or we should, execute a relationship with them, then that may be the time to invite them to come and present. What we would recommend is that an email goes out to Shakira, who's our administrative assistant, and that's an office manager. And so she would kind of vet what is it that they're wanting to present, what's the length of time, so that we can plan accordingly when we plan the full council agenda. Questions in reference to that? I'm trying to catch up in the chat here too. So,
Madam Chair, wondering if there's an opportunity. I know we had Health and Human Services come before, but to look at our predatory lending and targeting our seniors usually after something like this happens in our community, I say the crooks come in.
Yeah.
And when people are desperate and unsure of what to do, they get caught in some situations. So if that's an idea in the future as well.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. but you're hitting it right on the head of some of the things that we want to be thinking about. You know, how do we share as much information, but then also receive as much information from a resource perspective that can in turn be educated out to the community. So no, I like that idea. I think we need to think about that and have that dialogue, you know, next month at the executive council, and then bring it again fully for the full council meeting in February.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or concerns or comments about the two items that I just talked about? All right, quiet group tonight. So we're going to move on to Linda, and she is going to show the annual report. And just keep in mind, once we look at the report, we do need to approve it to move forward, because it is due Friday. That is the 15th.
Great.
And thank you to those that actually have helped. I do want to call those out, that we had, you know, at least 2 council members that have helped impart knowledge and give feedback and input to the report as well.
So that would be Councilman Dukes, Councilman Doe, and then actually a little later on, Councilman Busa, and I believe Councilwoman Busa and Daniels actually contributed as well. So this has been a group effort. I am just so excited to present this report to you, because I am very pleased with how it turned out and just the participation that we got from the council members. So this annual report is all about empowerment. How do we empower people through legislation, through policies, through outreach, and how do we get people engaged? And this first page kind of says it all with COVID. It says it all and what's going on in our country. So if we can turn to the next page, please. And if you can make that maybe full screen. I don't know how you do that, but okay. So this page, what you'll see is a letter from our chair, Dr. Hughes, as well as a letter from myself. And mainly just talking about what was going on and how we felt about the work that had been done throughout the year. Okay. Next slide, please. Empowering through equitable action. As you can see, hands raised up. It's all about power. That's where we're at. Page 3, please. So page 3 discusses our mission. And pretty much, I mean, everybody knows what the mission is, but again, we were empowered by the Minnesota legislature to ensure that people of African heritage are fully able to take advantage politically, socially, economically of policies and procedures of the state, so that we can move our people forward. We do that through advising the governor, the legislature on issues, on statutes. We serve as a liaison to the federal government and the state government and private organizations on, again, matters that affect the African heritage people. We implement programs that are designed to solve problems that due to our research, we find out there are issues in the community. We bring those issues forward and try to come up with solutions. And then we love to publicize the accomplishments, because we are all about lifting up our people and making sure that people know all the great work that is being done by African heritage individuals. So what is the landscape of the African heritage community? We have about 454,000 members of African heritage. And again, African heritage, for those who might be on Facebook, would be African Americans and African immigrant community. And then anyone else that kind of falls in the outliers of that. The African heritage community is about 8% of Minnesota's population. We are the second largest population group in the state. And what you'll see before you are a couple of graphs One speaks to where we are in terms of the one that is more of a line graph. That speaks more to where we are in reference to other ethnic groups. And so as you can see, we are leading the charge. And then if you look over to the pie chart, that is a breakdown of the African Heritage Group in and of itself. So it breaks down like how many Ethiopians we have, how many people are African American. And there's more information on that. And all of this information was sourced through our state demographers. So I want to make sure that I give them a thank you at this time as well. Next slide, please.
So with this section, we are focusing on the activities that the council participated in or led specifically during 2020. So obviously this is, you can go to the next half of the page. I think you all have seen previous drafts. So we have a layout that is in landscape for annual report, which is a little bit different than past annual reports that have been in portrait layout. So this is our report when it comes to our 2020 activities. We are focusing a lot on some of the specific work that kind of rose in as a result of some specific issues this year that are unique to this year, as well as reporting on our major events that the council already leads on. This first paragraph is just introducing the section. The next paragraph is specifically talking about the poll that we partnered with the Othering, Belonging, and Prosperity Now, and just speaking about that work that was focusing on policing, public safety, and economic justice issues. If you want to scroll down a little bit, Shakira, this next section that is at the bottom of this page going into the top column on the right is really just a summary of our core major events that the council sponsors, including African Heritage Day on the Hill, which, as you all know, it was our last major event before the pandemic actually came in March. And then we also briefly discussed our legislative session debrief, which was our first major event that we hosted completely virtual. And it was a very strong success for the council and still has strong turnout despite it being virtual. In addition, at the top of the next column, we also discussed the summer outreach program, the Conversations with the Council program that we ran, as well as the Fall Policy Summit. And then in this last portion around legislative action, we were specifically talking about some of the responses that we advised and urged leadership to take in the wake of the George Floyd investigation, including appointing Attorney General Ellison as the lead prosecutor, and also being able to support numerous policy reforms that were passed by the legislature in July, focusing on police reform in particular, and there is a summary of those. So we can go to the next set of pages. This is pages 6 and 7 of the report, and this is focusing specifically on outreach activities. This is largely focusing, if you can scroll down to the bottom, more so on the COVID-19 response. To the bottom, back on that same page. Thank you, Shakira, where the picture of the little girl is. Thank you. So we start with introducing a quick data point around the effects that COVID has had, not just directly on African Heritage community members, but indirectly. I think one of the most startling statistics that we have seen in our data at the state is that over 64% of African Heritage Minnesotans have at one point filed for unemployment benefits over the course of the pandemic, which is the highest rates in state history among Black workers. And so This has been a very difficult, it continues to be a very difficult season for our community on multiple fronts. And so how are we making sure that we are making the community's needs known at the state? In the summer, Representative Ruth Richardson was able to get a resolution passed at the state level, and we offered a letter of support for that resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. And since then, that resolution has been able to produce a short-term committee at the House that presented a litany of recommendations around addressing racial issues of racial justice at the state. Going into the next page, this is focusing a lot on the COVID-19 outreach that was done in the early months of the pandemic to really be able to shepherd the state's response and how it will account for African heritage Minnesotans and their specific needs. And so this talked about how we spent a lot of time, there was a lot of proposals coming from the community and from different vantage points in those early months. So we spent a lot of time being able to track and compile those. And then also met with community members so that we can very much ensure that we are representing their interests at the state level in a policy one-pager. And I think Hollis was Councilmember Winston was part of that process prior to becoming a council member. We also did phone banking and called a portion of our list to really just check in on our community members and to make sure that they felt supported by the council and felt supported by the resources coming out of the state. We also spent a lot of time focusing on greater Minnesota needs, and specifically there were a lot of different needs coming out in different areas, and also how COVID was impacting the meatpacking industry and workers in that area. Hi, Councilman Crawford, I think you were waving. So we spent a lot of time really focusing on the needs specifically in greater Minnesota, making sure that they were not lost in the sauce, as I would say. We also spent briefly some time just coordinating with the governor's office and reaching out to different people in the community, particularly business owners being affected in the personal care industry. There was a lot of debate in those early months about how to ensure that their work could be safe and that they would have the latitude to do that, but also still be able to, work. And then also, we actually hosted several calls with the governor and the lieutenant governor and the African heritage community leaders. And the timing was very interesting because our first calls were probably 3 or 4 days after the murder of George Floyd. And so not only were we addressing COVID, but we were directly addressing that particular tragedy at the same time. In those calls, it was a very sobering, very sobering set of meetings. And so being able to have those direct conversations with our leadership. The final thing on this page is from the COVID-19 dashboard. It is a graph that is just looking at COVID cases, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and deaths by race. And so we talk about on the committee's page, our participation in the Community Resiliency Recovery Work Group. This is one of the things that this work group directly worked on, was making data more transparent by race and ethnicity at the state level. And so you can see on this graph, and this data is still present on the COVID-19 dashboard at the state. And they have just now actually created a separate dashboard for vaccine data in that process as well. So we'll get that information out to the community. But you can see the Minnesota population is 7% of Black, there are 7% Black Minnesotans. And at the time that this graph was screenshot and taken, we're 9% of cases, 12% of hospitalizations, and 12% of ICUs. So we are disproportionately affected in those areas. We are underrepresented among deaths. There's 5% of deaths in the Black community. And that's the section.
Great. Next slide, please. And these are just some images, again, of empowerment. We're empowering in strong policies. So for 2020, the legislative priorities, the team started out actually tracking about 33 legislative bills that focused on child and family services, education, civil human rights, and justice reforms. Just a couple of the big ones that we are for sure moving forward with supporting is the Minnesota African American Family Preservation Act. We're definitely a proponent of strong families, and when there are issues with children in the home, we want to ensure that the children aren't just put in foster care. We believe that kids should be at home as long as it's in the best interest of the child. And so we're definitely supporting that again. The Crown Act, which prohibits discrimination based on hairstyle in the workplace. And so there's a few others that we have listed, and you can go through that. But then on March 13th, everything kind of changed, as Amber mentioned earlier, is that although we supported all these bills, the legislative body had to shift and everything became about COVID. And so many of the bills that they were trying to move forward actually were put on hold. And so what you'll see is a lot of these bills will be actually presented again in session this year. So under legislative initiatives, a large part of what we do is testify, we submit letters of support. And so we did do that again, just a few that we did support. We supported the ombudsman for corrections for addressing specific challenges of COVID-19 in our correctional system. We supported working to eliminate life without release for juveniles. You know, juveniles should not have life sentences when you're 12, when you're 11. They should have the opportunity to have a life after they get out. And we know that unfortunately a large part of our juveniles are in the system, and unfortunately that affects us heavily. Just a couple things, the Crown Act and the high-rise sprinkler bill. So that's what we have on legislative initiatives. And keep in mind, these are just a few initiatives that we put in the report. There was a lot more work that was done, but you can't put everything in the report. So we just pulled out some things that focused in different areas. So for example, that high-rise sprinkler bill, that's related to housing. You know, the African American family bill that relates back to children and families. And so this is just a synopsis of the work that has been done. Next page, please. The election. 2020 was a great year for us in terms of the African heritage people, in terms of elections. This year, we elected our first African American Asian female vice president. So that's a huge win for us. And then locally in the House, we gained 4 new seats. So congratulations to the new legislators. And then we had 5 returning legislators. So we have a ton of people who are there, legislators who are there and who will be representing us. I'm excited about that. And then in the Senate, we still have Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who is a champion, and he definitely makes things happen. And then joining him will be Senator Omar Fatah. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. Please correct me, because I want to make sure that I say his name appropriately. And then we lost Senator Jeff Hayden. And we just want to say thank you to him. He has been on the board and a strong advocate for African heritage people, and we love him and we wish him the best. So I think that that's all for the election. And then Shakira. Shakira, the financial.
Are you able to take over for a little bit? I've got a little bit of a little kid emergency over here.
Oh, okay. All right. On the financial report, you guys should have the actual report with you. And so in fiscal year 2020, the council operated the year with a budget of $531,000. We actually carried forward $99,000 in staff savings into the year. And since though this was a biennium year, anything that we have, and I'm actually on the financial report, Shakira, anything that we have left over that savings, as Director Chair Hughes mentioned, or Chair Hughes mentioned, is what we will not be able to carry that forward. So then starting next year, our budget will be $532,000 unless we get the funding for an additional headcount, which I put into I submitted a change item request to get that. So if you look at staffing, we started the year with 3 full-time staff, and then brought on Amber Jones as the outreach coordinator extraordinaire. So we're thankful and very grateful to have her because she's been huge with this. And then after that, and then in October, I was brought on as the executive director by the Legislative Coordinating Commission, which, so that means we will end up having 4 individuals once we confirm our legislative and policy director, which I'll be able to speak to that a little bit later. So I think that that is it for the financial report. Okay, so there we have it, the beauty of the financial report, and forgive the technology, we know how things go, right? Okay, so we're gonna move over next to empowering strong destinies. Okay, and Shakira, are you able to speak to this? Okay, well, that's the beauty of working from home. So empowering strong destinies, and basically this is where we are letting people know what's going on, what are we doing, and how they can join us. So the first week, we always have an executive council meeting, and at that time, we decide on what the agenda will be for the full council meeting. The second week, second Tuesday, there's the full council meeting where the business of the council is conducted. And both of these meetings are open to the public, and we would love for you to join us. This council exists for you. We are here to do the work of the African heritage people. So we would love for you to join us and get engaged and let us know what the issues are so that we can bring those forward to the legislative body. Week 3, we'll start up our legislative trainings again once our policy director is on board. And then Amber Jones, she is having monthly statewide calls with Greater Minnesota partners, because the Twin Cities for sure is where a lot of the issues are, but people outside of the Twin Cities, they matter too. They have issues as well. Some are the same as ours, but some are slightly different. And so we want to make sure that all people of African heritage that live in the state of Minnesota feel as if they are getting equal equal treatment and equal services. And then the last week, we're prepping for this meeting. Shakira, if you're able to, if you can slide over. So the next slide really is just the calendar of events. Today is the 12th, where we have the council meeting. Our annual report, as Chair Hughes mentioned, was due on January 15th. And so we will have that in because this is basically finished. We're just checking to make sure that there are no errors in the report. The governor's MLK Day is January 16th. And I don't have my glasses on, so forgive me if I say the wrong date, but you can read that. And so the January 18th. And so there will be an MLK program. And I believe that Council Member Crawford was involved in the planning of that virtual event. The session started January 5th and goes through May 17th. And that's just where the legislative body convenes and starts deciding what they want to move forward in terms of bills. January 24th is the Day on the Hill. That's a Wednesday, and this year it will definitely be virtual. Spring break in March. Senate ends May 17th. And then in June, we'll have our council retreat. And then also in June will be a session debrief, and that's where we will meet with the Black legislature, the legislative body, and just talk about and analyze the legislative session. July 1st is when we start the fiscal year 2022. So we end on June 30th and immediately go into 2022. And then July through September, our outreach coordinator is really out there pounding the pavement and getting out there doing community roundtables and having discussions with the community just to find out what are the issues, and she brings those back to the body. And then
Linda, I can chime in.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I have a toddler and he was doing what 2-year-olds do, so I do apologize.
Okay.
Just a couple things to point out with the governor's MLK celebration. He is going to have another one this year. It's going to be completely virtual, so we want to make sure that people do tune in for that. We'll have information on it on our website as well as on our social media. And like Linda said, we want to thank Councilmember Crawford for that. We also want to thank our past Councilmember Lawson for her participation as well. She was present during that part of the session. We also want to thank everybody who came to our African Heritage Day on the Hill last year. We had over 300 people present, which is our biggest turnout yet. So we want to thank everybody for coming out for that. We were the most attended Day on the Hill for any of the ethnic councils. So we definitely want to thank our community members for showing up for that. It definitely means a lot to us and to the work that we are doing when we show up to the Capitol and we show people that we are more than just numbers on a graph, that we are actually there. We do hold them accountable and they need to see us. So it's really important that when we are able to go back to the Capitol and resume things like normal, that you do attend our Day on the Hill and that you do come to in district meetings or anything, really to put yourself out there so that your legislator can see you and see that you do matter and that you are holding them accountable. As Linda was saying, with the summer Say Right Always program between July and September. Participation there is also very helpful. If there are any legislative matters that you'd like us to go over, if there's any community events that you have, please do share them with us. We will definitely put them on our website. We will try to put as many things as possible as we can on there and get that information out to our community for attendance. Our Fall Policy Summit is also heavily attended. We normally focus on a few key legislative matters within our community, but we are open to any other matters as they do arise. Go over to our next screen here. So our next part of our annual report is just our CMAH structure. So as you can see, our board does sit on a few really impactful committees. We are on the COVID-19 community resiliency. We are on cultural and ethnic community councils. We are on civic engagement councils. We are also very influential on the governor's MLK celebration, although we do not host it ourselves, but we do partner very heavily with that office. We are on the Violent Crimes Coordinator Committee. We are also on the Governor's Workplace Development Board and Racial Equity Committee. We monitor the internal controls as well as Minnesota State colleges and universities, and we do work very closely with the Ombudsman committee. One of the past bills that we were able to pass was one where they actually re-established the office, the Ombudsman's office in the DOC. That was really important for us. As I go on to the next page, you can see our wonderful council members. Have our awesome Chair Hughes here, and then our past council member Fatima Lawson, as well as Governor Waltz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. This just has everybody's terms. We are always open and looking actively for more members on the council. We are currently full, but whenever a spot does open up, please do send in an application. We want to make sure that we are encompassing and representing as many aspects, as many parts of the African heritage diaspora as we can. And we do try our best to make that happen and make sure that we are having members not only from the African American diaspora, but also from the African American diaspora as well. And then we just have our holding hands. Last year was our 40th anniversary. We are hoping to do something virtual at some point to celebrate that, but because of COVID, we did have to kind of push things to the side burner and deal with that more aggressively because of the numbers that Amber did mention earlier. But we are hoping to do something, and I guess happy 40th to us. Linda, if you want to close it out.
Linda, you're muted. You're just talking and you're muted.
Thank you, Chair Hughes. I'm very excited. This is the report that we would like to submit to the council. I've only been here for a few months, so a lot of this work was done prior to me getting here, but I'm just excited about the work and excited about the potential to do more and the engagement of the council in the work. And I just see good things going forward. So in addition to the annual report, we also are putting together a 2-page summary that we can send out to the community. The community also is welcome to get the annual report when it's done, completed, which this is basically it. You know, we're just doing one last run through, just to make sure, you know, that my name is spelled right. That's important, but just to make sure that there are no typographical errors. But this is pretty much done. But we do have a 2-pager that we will be doing that's going to kind of focus on some of the highlights. And if you can pull that up, Shakira, that'd be great. And basically the first page of that is just to talk again about our mission and how we are empowered by the state. And we love this image so much that we thought we would reuse it for the summary, because it's just strong and it speaks to everything that has happened for the year. We wanted people to understand who the African Heritage Group is, so that image is also there. And then if you look at the next page, we focused on what are the key things that we're doing. A lot of it is outreach. So you'll see some, in Shakira, next page, you'll see some statements referring to outreach. And then also, we are about legislation. Our job is to bring the issues forward from the African heritage community, figure out who we need to partner with, whether it's a state agency or a legislator, and bring that to the legislative body to drive change, positive change for our African heritage community. So what you'll see on that side of it, and we'll probably have that up shortly, is just some of the legislative work that has been done. So I'm excited. And then we're talking about empowering through amplified voices, courage. We need to stand up and say, what is it that we need, and bring that information forward. So I'm excited to have this little one sheet back and forth, and to be able to share with everyone and be able to send this out. You guys can share this out as well. So I am presenting the annual report and the summary for review to the council board.
Thank you, Linda and team. So Shakira, you can stop sharing, please. So if you're able, council members, to turn your camera on, that would be fabulous. So what I do want is, one, are there any questions or comments that that anybody has in reference to the report that was just shown?
I mean, I'll just come off and just say, wow, like, wow. This has been some amazing work on behalf of the council. And using my mental health practitioner lens, I just think about all the legislation, all the work that's been done that impacts just the mental health wellness, especially during this time, has been amazing. When you think about identity and things with the family. Just great work, council. This is amazing.
Thanks, Quentin. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ditto and say that it is amazing. Aesthetically, it is beautiful. I really appreciate the graphs and just the visuals that were selected. And the content, of course, just really depicts well our experience in the last year and the work that has been done to kind of combat many of the challenges that our community has faced. And so thank you to all that participated.
I just want to add my voice to that, especially to appreciate the work that Linda has done. I know she just came a few months back, but this is the first major, I guess, feat, pretty much. So I think a lot of kudos to you actually for the work and getting your team, all of you guys working together, and the rest of the council members who participated. I think this report kind of really highlights a lot of stuff that's happening, and like you said, there are a lot of opportunities that we have, especially going into this year. I think we really focus on how we address the issues that affect the African heritage community. At the same time, there's a lot of opportunities to actually drive the narrative about the community as a whole. So looking at other ways of maybe projecting the community as far as, you know, how do we celebrate ourselves? How do we celebrate what we do? And I think that's something to look forward to in the next year for sure, in terms of what's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
So thank you again. Thank all of you.
Can I just interject, Madam Chair? Thank you, Council Member Doe, and I would be remiss if I did not thank the work that Amber Jones and Shakira have put in. They have been amazing, especially Amber Jones with getting this this annual report produced. So thank you, and our chair as well has been right there. So thank you so much for helping us put this together and putting something out there that we can be proud of. Like you said, Councilmember Doe, we want to celebrate the work, and we want to celebrate you guys and the work that's being done in the community. So thank you.
Can I just add one more thing just related to the report? I know that legislators will get an opportunity to review it, and I'm just wondering how the information in it might help to influence the vaccination and how that is being rolled out. The conversation earlier had me thinking about just those that are eligible to receive, and do we have data on, you know, those eligible and what that looks like in comparison to the African heritage community in Minnesota. And so just wondering, you know, if there are ways that we might be able to use the information in this report to influence the trajectory of that rollout.
I think that's a great comment, and I think it's we should have further discussion on that. But for sure, the legislative body will get this report. And I know that the COVID team has details. They have the details and the breakdown on the African-American market versus the overall population. But I think that warrants further conversation. And I would love to know who would want to be involved in that conversation as to how can we best use this report to move the needle in some areas, specifically with the vaccine. Volunteers?
Well, I know we have a meeting, coming up with Dr. Chumalo, and I think that even though it's in reference to, some of the work that he's doing, but I know he's been instrumental, and Amber knows this as well, he's been instrumental in talking about, the vaccine and the impact that it will and possibly have further down the road on our BIPOC communities, more specifically our Black community. And so I think that there could be multiple ways that we can engage in those discussions, and even thinking about our own individual organizations, the conversations that we need to be having. I know one of the things that we're looking at, as an institution, is being a vaccine site. And so how is that going to impact, not only employees, but how will that impact our students that are of color that are saying, wait a minute, are you saying that now as a student I have to take this? And that's not at all what we're saying. But I think the more that we can educate, Andre, I think you hit it right in the head. How do we leverage this report and do such a thing? So if you all have an interest, I would highly recommend shooting either Linda an email, more importantly, I would say shoot Kira an email to say that you have an interest in, even an ad hoc, like I said, committee that can start to pull together, especially now that we are in the session, and what does that mean going forward?
This is Jude.
Go ahead, Jude. Somebody has some background noise. So I don't know if we need to mute it for now. Keep your cameras on, but if we need to mute while we're not talking, we may need to do that. But go ahead, Jude.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Yeah, with regards to the vaccine, I'm one of the external advisors to the Community Residency and Recovery COVID-19 that was set up by the governor. So I joined last week, and I know we didn't have much data, but we'll have a meeting tomorrow. So as we set up the committee and other ways to get engaged, I'll be also feeding the council on what is going on there. And in one of the meetings, in the last meeting, we talked about reaching out to communities and organizations and leaders to get feedback from them as well. So it will also be necessary to get feedback from our community and put that in the front to the committee as we need.
Thank you for that.
Well, one quick question. This raises the question, though. What is our expectation from these legislators when they read this report? And I don't know last year whether we got feedback or did we get any direct, feedback to the council based on it. And Chair Hughes, maybe you know more on that. But what is the expectation that? Giving this report to the legislature, how have they responded in the past in the first place? I guess that's the question. And if we have any kind of expectation, or just to leverage it.
What I think one of the things is, how are we utilizing our advocacy? How are we utilizing, our advisement as we've been working with the governor and as we've been working with other legislators? Where have we been instrumental? Where can it also show where we can upscale, so to speak, to say that, hey, we may not have been, so much engulfed in this issue, but maybe this is an issue that we need to kind of elevate and take to a higher level than normal. I'm not sure, and Shakira may know this, I'm not sure if in the past we've received direct phone calls. My guess is it probably has been directly to either, at the time, policy director and or the ED. So Shakira, I don't know, have you all received phone calls after that has been distributed?
Yeah, we've gotten phone calls and emails with feedback, both from community members and from legislators on what they'd like to see for us this year with improvements and what things really stood out for them. I know that in the past, a big, eye-opener for them was our numbers. They didn't realize that we were as big of a population as we were because we had previously been funded the least. So when they realized that, they did fix that this year for us. Yeah. And then with community members, they just really wanted to know the community aspect of it. they wanted to know more about the bills and what we accomplished in the legislative session, which we did definitely do that edit this year. And then legislators just wanted something that's a little bit more toned down. So this year we have 11 pages. I know previously it was about 16 or so pages. So this should be a more slimmed down and easier to read version.
Yeah, so that's real helpful. Thanks, Shakira. Wayne, did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And I would say if anybody has looked at the previous reports, and I know, I believe Dr. Lawson is still on the call, if we go back even 3 years, you can see the progression of just content, continuity, and just how we have been, the engagement has actually gone up. And so every year, I'm almost positive, and I would be 100% right, that I'm sure legislators are looking at that as well to see, are we producing the same thing, or how have we progressed as a council, knowing that we, our allocation now, we have the highest allocation. And so what are we doing with that? Are we utilizing it to, our greatest advantage? Is it showing that we've been out in the community and we're responding to what community has had to say, or are we just producing what we feel is, nice and warm and fuzzy, so to speak. But I mean, this report, obviously very powerful pictures that were out there, and a ton of work, has definitely, gone on, from that. And so, yeah, Dr. Lawson, good, you are still on there. But yeah, I mean, she can even type in the chat of how she, has looked at the report from when we first served together till now. And you can see it's night and day. It literally is night and day. NECA Creative did a phenomenal job, on that. The one thing that my hope would be as we go into FY22 is the hardest thing that the state has had to battle with is accurately accounting for our population. And so I would love for the council to take a lead on saying, how do we accurately, account for, so when we see the numbers and say, this is our population of African heritage, we don't have to put a disclaimer that says, does not depict the whole population, that we can finally have something that's out there that says, no, this is actually the entire population. So I would love for us to figure out that way of how do we pull those numbers together, because even if you aggregate them, they're not necessarily accurate. When you disaggregate them, again, they're not necessarily accurate because it depends on where you're pulling it from. For the most part, it's pulled from the census. Some it's pulled from, the ACS, which is the American Community Survey. So I think that is where the council could do a really heavy lift for this next fiscal year, if we can finally get to a point where we're accurately being accounted for. Any other questions, concerns, or positive comments about the report? So hearing none, we do need to, somebody want to say something?
Madam Chair. I want to thank you for the report as well. So you guys did an awesome job. And also to our new executive director, Linda, and also all the committee members and those who proofread and compile it, the staff. So it's just amazing. The report, if it's going to for selling, I think we'll make some money on that. I also appreciate our former ED, Justin, for the work he did before he left. So this report captures some of the things he did, and the council has come a long way, and I truly appreciate all the work you guys do. Thank you.
No, thank you. Hats off to the team. I did nothing but just made quick edits here and there. So with that, we do need to approve it. So if I can have a motion to approve the reports so that Friday they will be ready to send it off.
Madam Chair, I move motion to approve the report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Hats off, you guys. Nice job. heavy lifting from Linda and her team. Absolutely, thank you. So we're gonna move on with our agenda. We actually will be done before 8 o'clock. Whoop, whoop. So staff report. I don't know if you all want to give Linda, Amber, and Shakira if there's any updates that you all want to give. So if you want to give them at that time, any order. I mean, we have outreach, legislative, and then ED, but you all can give them honestly in any order.
Amber, do you have anything that you want to report?
I don't have much. I mean, most of the activities last month were surrounding the annual report. But just to make sure people have just some updates legislatively since the last time we met in December. Some of the quick things that, you know, they had another special session in December and they passed that $216 million business relief package for COVID. And so just really making sure that those resources are getting out to businesses. Some of the resources are like directly allotted to businesses based on tax returns through the Department of Revenue. And so there should be some funding going to businesses. It was specifically for businesses around primarily the hospitality industry. But then they also have several different kinds of grants. And so particularly businesses that really are not able to operate during this last kind of stay home order. So a lot of the like entertainment, things of that nature. And so there's a litany of grants and funding opportunities available through DEED. And so please just make sure in the community if people are seeking aid in any kind of way that they're able to access that. Also last month, so I spoke with resolution that Representative Richardson passed and the temporary committee that was created as a result of that she and Representative Moran co-chaired. And so they did release a report and policy recommendations. It's about a 60-page report through the legislature's website, and it's very extensive. There is so much, I mean, all the things we know as far as all of the historical and the data-based reporting on issues of racial inequality, both nationally and within the state. And then they also have a series of policy recommendations. So we do anticipate some of those policy recommendations probably being included in several legislators' priorities this session. And then we spoke a lot about, during the executive in particular, about the vaccine and just a lot of the distribution for the vaccine started pretty much around the holiday season. And so there may be a lot of information that the state released at that time that may have missed or community members may have missed. And so really want to make sure this month that people are aware that there is a new landing page on the Department of Health's website to discuss all the things related to the vaccine. There is an advisory group that has been meeting to determine a phased approach to the distribution. Currently, I still believe we are in the phase 1A phase, which is the very, very first phase, and most of the country is still there, which is really focused on care workers and the long-term care residents. And they were seeking public input on that approach, but the deadline for that was last week. And now they also have a data dashboard on the website that also tracking how many vaccines have been distributed to the state of Minnesota, which particular vaccine, if it's Pfizer, if it's Moderna, if it's another future approved vaccine, and who it's been distributed to. Currently, there is no data there that is reporting racial or ethnic statistics around the vaccine distribution. And so that's something, we have a meeting tomorrow with the CRR work group. So that is something that we can discuss in that space, if that is going to be possible at all. So there's a lot more information coming out from the state that we can use as a council to take that back to the community so people can be well informed about how this process is rolling out and how it will show up in the community. And so those are pretty much the main things that I think I wanted to share. I think would be relevant for today.
Great.
Thanks, Amber. Any questions for Amber? Okay.
And I do have a few things that I would like to share. First off, as you know, we have been trying to hire a legislative and policy director for a while now. And I am so excited to say that we have found someone, Theo Rose, and he has accepted the job and will be starting on January 20th. We are really excited about him. He's coming as research analyst out of the University of Chicago, has a ton of research and policy experience. And so we are excited to have him join us. And I'd like to thank Councilman Crawford for his participation in the interviews, as well as Amber. Amber, she participates in everything. So I would like to thank them, though, for actually helping to interview and helping to make the selection on who is the perfect candidate. So excited to report that. You should have gotten a couple of letters, positioning letters and support letters. One regarding English language learners. And so we're partnering with the council, the other ethnic councils on that. And based on that letter and probably some pressure from other groups, we have been able to move the needle. So we haven't gotten the access testing postponed, but they did widen the timing for the access testing. And so that means that you won't have as many kids in the room. And they can space the kids out, and then people can come, have a longer period of time to get it done. So we're still working on getting it postponed because the African immigrant community and immigrants in general are disadvantaged from having to go in, and frankly, their safety is put at risk, by having to go in during COVID. So that's a hot issue even with just schools. They're all over this. So we have been able to support that. Just wanted to remind people about the training, the new members, that training is mandatory. I've been told that it's in statute. In order for you to stay on the board, you have to do that training. So if for whatever reason there's an emergency and you can't get it done, you need to see me as soon as possible on that. So you should have got an email that talks about that. The other thing is, we're part of the governor's MLK event. And so as a part of that, we always do a sponsorship. And so I had to make a decision yesterday as to whether or not we're going to do that. So we've been doing it forever. And we have, our council members have participated on the board, and we are the African Heritage Group. So we want to make sure that we support the major events that are targeted toward us that are coming out of the governor's office. So I would like to see if Chair Hughes, if you can put forward a vote on doing a sponsorship for $3,000, and that sponsorship would bring us, let's see if I can pull it up quickly. And I don't know, Amber, if you know off the top of your head, but that would give us sponsorship on the school booklet. We'd be thanked within all social media. We'd be a part of the official MLK marketing toolkit, and it's a gold sponsorship. So I would like for you guys to ratify that. I think it's important that we participate. We have the funds, and we have done this in previous years.
Questions from the council members? And I'll say normally we would have had this, brought to us prior, and Lynn and I had this conversation. And she's like, I didn't know. And I said, yeah, and those things happen. And so how we have it set up in our bylaws, why did I just sound like Kevin Hart, how this is set up, but the way that our bylaws are outlined is we do need to vote on such items. So I would need a vote for to approve them to spend the $3,000 for the sponsorship.
Just one comment there, because while it's true that sponsoring these events is something that we did in the past, I think one of the things that we talked about in terms of sponsorship, we got to be very mindful that if we're going to open it up for one organization, there are other organizations similarly, the African Heritage play a major role. So then what do we do? So we have to stay away from actually sponsoring or using the word sponsorship. So
right.
We want to make it clear. So
can I speak to that, Madam Chair?
Perspective, really. But I mean, that's the term that they use. But yes, Wayne is correct in what he is saying.
Yes, and this is a governor's event where the council has always been partnering on this. So we had to make a decision and right away. So I'm throwing it in your hands, I guess is what I'm saying.
So so Chair, I guess my point I would make is that if this is a governor's event and it looks like we have somewhat of a legislative agenda, that we want the governor to kind of support, no issue, support it regardless. I just feel like, supporting something that's been ongoing for quite some time, the community is used to, it makes sense to kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a sponsorship or whatever, but it makes sense to support something like that for a variety of reasons. Whether you want to look at it goodwill with the governor, or whether you want to look at it as goodwill with the community, makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't think you want to take a step backwards to whether you don't support it, and then people start asking questions that you're not willing to support something, an event that has opened up rights to, not an event, but an event that celebrates a movement and a man who opened up rights to everybody, no matter where you're from. So I don't think it's a good look to say no, but that's just my opinion.
Others?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Daniels. I was gonna say, I do agree with what Councilmember Joe said earlier, because that was something we discussed earlier as a council to stay away from. However, if we have supported this in the past, I wanted to know, how much did we give before? Was it 3,000 in the past?
It was 1,000.
Is there a reason why it's 3,000 now?
The $3,000 came from, it's an upgraded level because it also includes being in the marketing toolkit that's sent out. And since we have excess funding, if we were tight on funding or at funding and at budget, then maybe we would say, okay, we can't afford to do do the 3,000. But I think that this gives us an extra marketing push. And so since the funding was available, we looked at doing the 3,000.
So is this,
let me say this,
currently asking for our sponsorship?
Say it one more time.
Yes.
Alfreda, I can hear you.
Is this the only organization, or are they the only people asking for our sponsorship right now?
Yes, and let me speak to that. This particular situation is something that we almost have to the yes was made before the approval was made, if that makes sense. And so typically this
Already
would not,
agreed upon?
so Linda had said yes prior to knowing it's got to come here first. So that's why we have to vote, because the yes was already made and it should have come here first. And then we had this discussion. But I also want to pinpoint that exactly what Wayne had said, we had agreed upon this pre-Linda, that any organization that came to us, we are not a philanthropic organization. And so that's why I hate the word sponsorship, because we specifically called it out in our bylaws to say this is where organizations were coming to us, whether it was Rondo Days, whether it was Juneteenth, whether it was other organizations. I know there was Books for Africa. I mean, there were several organizations that we basically gave money towards their event, which i.e. is a sponsorship. And we had agreed upon, because we are not a philanthropic organization, that we would not do that. So Linda brought this to me and I said, well, you've already said yes to them. So unfortunately, we have to kind of backtrack and approve it. But then now she knows that's not necessarily something that she's going to be able to do going forward. So this is almost one of those exceptions to the rule, because she had already moved on it without the discussion. And so her and I had that conversation to say, here's how this works. It doesn't normally say, oh, I'm going to do this. It's like, well, no, the council has to be brought to us. There's discussion, which is what we're having, and then we kind of move on it. Because what I don't want to have happen, and I have a feeling it probably will, because we're streaming, is then other organizations are going to say, well, you did it for this one, so why can't you do it for that? So that's why I'm calling out that this is an exception, because of the fact that the proper protocol was not followed. And it's like, well, you said yes, now you're saying no. What does that look like?
Yeah. The other thing is, this isn't an outside organization. This is the state, which we are a part of. This, the governor created the councils. So it's a little bit different too in my eyes, but yeah, you're right. Now that I know that, that I don't have the option of approving something like this, I will know in the future. But, regardless of that, I still believe that this is a good move for us, basically.
And I do have a question, Shakira, you can probably answer this. When we did this in the previous years, did we negotiate promotional aspects of our name with $1,000 sponsorship?
They had it set up differently with their levels. Last year when we did it, we were able to get that social media and that booklet inclusion. This year they switched what they do for each of their levels. And last year also it comes out, it doesn't come out of our sponsorship bucket. It ends up being an interagency agreement. So it's a little bit different than a sponsorship.
Okay. That's good to know. So it sounds like what was previously agreed upon is probably similar to what we would have done in the past, but the only difference is they increased the amount.
I think
accurate? Shakira, that's pretty accurate. Hold on, Wayne.
Okay.
Shakira, is that pretty accurate?
Yes,
okay.
That's accurate. The 3,000 level this year is what we had last year. We did 2,000 last year.
Okay, and that was the bigger question that I wanted to know. Go ahead, Wayne.
I wanted to reiterate what we had decided before, and I do understand as far as the importance of the day. I think it's across the board when we look at supporting any group. However, though, this is why I was talking in the beginning that we should be thinking about how we're gonna probably use the pot of money that probably might remain by the end of this year, so to speak, and how we're gonna use that. That's something we think about as an opportunity, because we just opened that door. If we're going to support any group, now, right? We even though it's clear it's an exception that we're trying to make, but we should have some way of thinking if the opportunity exists where we can support other organizations, then we should be open to doing it. Once the money is, like you said.
And I think that conversation can happen at our next executive meeting.
Yes.
In February.
Sure.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Do we have to do the $3,000 sponsorship? Like, could we do 1,000? And if so, like, what would that mean?
They'd have to put the levels back up.
Yeah, I am not sure of, because we had to make a commitment because of the timing. The timing is so tight. And I just heard about this, just so you know. And I was asking the question about whether or not this is something that we have done in the past. So I had to make a decision, and I made one before I knew that I was unable to do so. I guess my question too is, if we're going to do 1,000, since we do have we have 3,000 that we could use. To me, the 1,000 doesn't get us exactly what we were doing last year. So I still would recommend doing the 3,000 if, that's something you guys don't want to do. If you don't want to do it, I'd have to go back to them, but I don't know if at this juncture, because I did say we were going to do it.
I see. I wanted to clarify if you had already said that we were going to do the 3,000. And so, okay.
Yeah. Okay. It was kind of like we had to say yesterday, and actually yesterday was late getting in on this too. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. The request was already stated, and so we're kind of working backwards, and which is why I'm saying this is an exception. This is not necessarily how we would normally operate, and it is not necessarily and let's take sponsorship off the table and talk about more support. Because when we start to talk sponsorship, it brings some of us that have been on the council back to a discussion that we had before. But also, like Shakira said, and I don't know if you all caught that, but this would also be an interagency agreement, which is something that's very different than CBO, so to speak.
So with that said, I guess I support us doing the 3,000 to preserve the integrity of the decision our executive director has already made. I think there's a separate issue in terms of the precedents moving forward. And I think that at the next executive meeting, we should talk through what that precedence needs to be moving forward.
I agree. So are you putting that into the form of a motion, Andre?
Madam Chair, I actually wanted to say something. I was wondering then, I think Councilmember Doe said something that is very important. Can we go back and like revisit kind of like the bylaws where that discussion we had? So that way, in case a situation like this happened where we have extra money towards the end, we can possibly talk about giving that out to people who ask.
Right.
Is that something we can?
That's what I was saying in February, the executive meeting. You just cut out.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are you still there? I was like, you just cut out. You froze for a minute. I said, that's what I was saying, that the executive committee would have that conversation in February. And Vice Chair Doe actually is heading up for us to revisit the bylaws already anyway. So it's a perfect timing to go back and say, what do we want to look at? And how do we renegotiate, so to speak, or reword how the sponsorship is written in the bylaws? Because the one thing that we want to be able to do is, and I can say, for me personally, and for the sake of the council, is to be able to give the executive director and her team autonomy. but not to the point where they're just, you know, willy-nilly spending. But sometimes, and we've had this conversation for years, that sometimes when these events come up, they don't always coincide with when our meetings are. So in the event that there are certain things that we have time and we can come bring them to the table, have that discussion, great. But there also are times where there has to be a split decision, and then, you know, they kind of move from there. So I agree. You know, Wayne, I would say now is a perfect time to get your folks together that said that they wanted to, you know, help with the bylaws, and that can be, you know, a meeting should be made immediately for you all to get together. And then that will also be the topic of discussion in February, because we don't want to keep running into this. So if the next biennium that happens, we don't want a situation, because that's what kind of got us into this giving out money, and people coming back, because we had literally two, you know, one biennium, but two cycles where we had an overage of dollars. And so we had several people coming to us to say, hey, I want you to sponsor this, I want you to sponsor that. And yeah, there were large dollars that were given out. And so I think what we don't want to do is, although, yes, we want to help the community, but again, I want to reiterate, we are not a philanthropic organization. And so I think we have to be careful of how we are either aiding and advocating for certain events, how we're supporting certain events. And I think personally, the whole sponsorship term, we need to rethink that and have a deeper dive discussion of what does that mean? And how do we, you know, help the community? Because we do know our community needs financial resources. That's a given. I'm not speaking out of turn to say that we don't. You know, are we that organization? Potentially we could be, but does it always have to be financial? Not necessarily. Any other discussion about this? So I'm going to turn it back to Council Member Dukes. Are you going to put that into the form of a motion?
Sure, I'll jump out there and make a motion that we approve the $3,000 to support the governor's MLK event on the basis of, you know, the decision that has already been made by our executive director, and with the understanding that we will set a new precedence or talk about a new precedence in our next executive council meeting.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Quentin.
I second that very proudly.
Any more discussion? No more discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I was abstaining for this one.
I abstain.
Two abstentions?
Yeah.
Okay. Majority ruled, so motion carries. Thank you all for that. And yes, so Shakira, just make note that that will be agenda item for February's executive council meeting. We're gonna move on to Day on the Hill. So if you want to talk about that, Linda, the Day on the Hill and kind of where we're at.
Okay, great. So Day on the Hill, first off, thank you to my committee, Council Member Dukes and Council Member Abusa. So and then Amber Jones has been a part of this committee as well. And so what we've decided on is that we will host a virtual event on Wednesday, February 24. And this event will be quite different because it is virtual, but some of the components from last year will be the same. It is about bringing the legislature to the people. And so the plan is to have all of the old and new legislators put together a 2-minute video talking about their program and their priorities and agenda. So 2 minutes only. And then also we'll have a couple minute videos from community partners. So we've tried to select some individuals who we've worked with in the past and are currently working with now, as well as making sure that we had representation from the African immigrant community, as well as greater Minnesota. So the plan is to have our communications consultant, Reggie, put everything together. So we'll have, the governor and lieutenant governor, attorney general, all those individuals as well. And so Reggie will put that together in an hour-long program, and then it'll be aired on February 24. Team, did I miss anything? Okay.
Not that I noticed.
Okay, so that is the plan. We're excited. It'll be new and different, but we believe that it will still accomplish the goals of bringing the legislative body, our Black legislators, to the people. So that's one part. That's a major part. But then also another part will be the legislative trainings, and then at some point we will have a meet and greet with the new legislators, new African Heritage legislators, and we'll bring them forward so that people can connect with them as well. So that is what we're doing.
And then if you want to talk about the strategic plan, the updates of where we're at with that.
Okay, just in terms of the strategic plan, we are still looking at trying to have some type of retreat. It'll either be February, we're looking at February, but it could end up being in March, depending upon the calendars. So we are working out those details with DeYoung Consulting, and then we'll be coming to you shortly with possible times and dates of when we could meet for a couple of hours.
Perfect. Are there any announcements?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Jude.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the Racial Equity Legislative Advocacy Work Group. This was created by City of St. Paul Legislative Advocacy Work Group. So this during the COVID last year, around May, maybe April. So Melvin Cora, the mayor of St. Paul, he called leaders from different organizations and ethnic groups around the state to talk about COVID-19. So we just met like once or twice, and then George Floyd was murdered. And then the demand for racial justice was added to the pile. So we met a couple of times last year, different organizations and leaders as well. And then we had 4 different areas to work on. So I belong to a legislative advocacy group and also economic equity group as well. And we had some priorities on legislative agenda last year, especially the funding bill and other ones as well. So coming to this year's 2021, which is legislative year for the state. So we looked at different areas, things we are going to support going forward. And we had over 20 different proposals we have made. And among all of them, so we selected 4, the different groups, presented out of 20 proposals. We voted on them, and we came up with these 4. So I'm just going to read them briefly. So one was eviction reform. So that one requires landlords to provide a pre-filing notice 14 days before a formal eviction action could be brought in the court, and prohibits eviction reporting until a court judgment has been rendered in favor of the landlord. So this is just to help eviction, which most of our community members fall into who have issues with the landlord. So this was the organization that brought this was Homeline. Then the second one was emergency service program proposal, and this was proposed by Minnesota Coalition of the Homeless. So one is to provide emergency services program. So we're asking for $15 million base increase biennium to the emergency service program that is administered by the Office of Economic Opportunity. So currently, budget is for ASP is $1.7 million per biennium. So that's the second proposal. And then the third one was proposed by Minnesota African Coalition. And in that one, so we're asking for 10% technical assistance and culturally appropriate community engagement funding, technical support and grants for micro businesses, and building equity in supporting micro business in the state. The fourth one is driver's license suspension reform. This was brought in by Minnesota Asset Building Coalition. Legislation to end driver's license suspensions for failure to pay or failure to appear on a traffic ticket, and to eliminate the additional suspension period imposed upon conviction of driving after suspension. Another one, the fifth one, but it was merged with the equity grant, is that one was proposed by Coalition of Asian American Leaders, PAR. So that one is Nonprofit Infrastructure Grant Program. So the Nonprofit Infrastructure Grant Program is aimed at supporting the mission of small culturally led organizations by strengthening their infrastructure. So this will be merged with the technical assistance for the community of color as well. So we'll be working to drive these proposals for this session with legislature, and part of the guideline when we proposed this was that it's going to focus on the BIPOC community, and it doesn't have to focus on any organization or any ethnic group in particular. They're just things that that affect people of color in the state. So we'll be working on this, and hopefully we'll have the new hire, the legislative advocacy director, when he or she comes and plays, we'll be working with that person to work on these proposals, because these things are just, some of them are very critical to the community, and they're going to change some of the policies that affect us. So I just wanted to talk about this, and then I'm going to send information to Shakira to add it possibly in our next meeting, and also hopefully we'll have an agenda to talk more about it. By then, maybe we'll have more steps taken on the proposals.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other announcements? So are there any events, or are there any organizations that that you all know about that the council should be connected to? This is kind of that time to talk about that.
Madam Chair, this is Councilmember Daniels.
Yes, ma'am.
So I kind of wanted to put this organization, Black Immigrant Collective, under your radar, especially now that we're going to be having a discussion around the vaccination process. Big focus on Black immigrants specifically in Minnesota. And they're doing a lot of work around the vaccination, but specifically for like the Black immigrant community, kind of figuring out if the vaccine is going to cost money, or if you need an ID to go take the vaccine, and considering our undocumented Black communities, our immigrant communities, and folks who don't have access to driver license or any form of documentation to be able to get that vaccination. I will like to see some sort of collaboration or connection with the council and that organization, just because I believe they can provide some information on like the Black immigrant community that could help the council in moving forward with some of this work.
No, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, so any of those, any pieces that you want us to review, if you all can send those to Shakira, and then Shakira can send it out, for us to review. And then, as you get further along, then we can also, like you said, have a discussion of how does this interface with what the council is doing, or how can we even collaborate, so to speak? Because I think that's this vaccine, as you all know, has its pros, its cons, and several people are for it, but there's quite a few that are absolutely against it and not wanting to have it done. So the more that we can kind of help and educate, I think that'll be great. Any other announcements or anything?
Madam Chair, can I make a quick announcement?
Sure.
It's about the work that I do. So I work with the Minnesota Freedom Fund. I just wanted to share with the board and with the general community folks who are tuning in the live stream. So we pay criminal bail and immigration bonds for folks who can't afford it themselves. And so I just want to spread the word that if folks on the board or people who are listening in, if you know of someone who is detained, who can't afford to pay their immigration bond, or someone who has been arrested, is in jail right now, and can't afford to pay their criminal bail, we can do that. So if they can fill out the referral form, it's on the Minnesota Freedom Fund's website, then we can kind of follow up with them and then pay their bail or bond. And I just want to let board members know as well, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me.
Nice, thank you. That's excellent. Any other announcements? Well, look at that. I'm giving you 14 minutes of your life back. So it is 7:46. And if I can have a motion to adjourn. Good conversation today.
Chair, I move the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Look, everybody seconded. We are officially adjourned. Thank you all, and Happy New Year again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.